Dear students, welcome to our course on regional organizations. In this video, I am going to introduce you the second chapter of our textbook. This chapter deals with the purposes and roles of regional organizations in the international system. Let's start with learning outcomes. The second chapter has three main learning objectives. So at the end of this chapter, you will be able to understand variety of purposes and goals that regional organizations pursue in the international system. You can also evaluate the multiple expanding roles and functions of regional organizations in the international system. And finally, you can compare the purposes and roles of regional organizations from different areas in terms of their imitation or emulation of each other. Accordingly, this chapter has three main titles. The first title deals with the emergence and rise of regional organizations in the international system. The second one deals with the purpose of regional organizations. The final title deals with the roles of regional organizations. Let's start with the first title, the emergence and rise of regional organizations in the international system. In terms of regionalism, this is a new idea or theme which is key to international system, and particularly in the Cold War, in the post-Cold War era, we are talking about regionalization of world politics. In other words, in world politics, different regions gain importance in dealing with the global governance. For instance, in terms of regionalism, Europe and European Union generally dominate the academic literature. So Europe emerged as the key reference points and center of regionalism, and it's emerged as an inspiring example for other regions, for instance, such as Africa or Latin America or South America. But there is also another understanding of regionalism, which is called non-Western regionalism. This is based on regional cooperation, economic development, nation building, and preserving independence and sovereignty. When we will talk about African Union, for instance, we will refer to these terms such as defending independence, territorial integrity, and sovereignty, which are important principles for the developing non-Western world. Economically oriented regional organizations are, on the other hand, are focusing on trade and economic cooperation and integration. There are also military-oriented organizations, regional organizations. NATO and the Warsaw Pact can be some telling example of military alliances and military-oriented regional organizations. Let's move on to the purpose of regional organizations. There are, of course, economic purpose and goals. In terms of economic purposes, one of the main goal of regional organizations is to promote and foster economic integration. Economic integration is generally associated with the developed countries. So in case of European Union or North America, we can talk about the economic integration. And economic integration has different phases. It starts with free trade area, which means creating a free trade area with the removal of market barriers. So we are familiar with this free trade area and custom union, common market terms with the example of European Union, as much of you recognize these terms, I think. And the second phase is the creation of the customs union, which means forming customs union with removal of trade restrictions and setting up mechanisms for common trade policy towards non-members. The third phase is creating a common market, which is the establishing a common market by providing free movement of factors of productions. These factors are persons, capital, goods, or services. And finally, the creation of the economic or monetary union. which is reaching a common economic and monetary policy among members by coordinating national macroeconomic policies. And the final stage of economic integration is referring to full economic integration. This means that harmonization, unification of monetary, financial, and social policies and the creation of supranational institutions are achieved. So this is the final stage of economic integration. The second goal of economic purposes of regional organization can be economic development. But economic development, unlike economic integrations, are associated with developing countries, such as the South Asian economic, for instance, ASEAN or other economic regional organizations, such as, for instance, African Economic Community, which was created in the past. These are regional organizations which aims at promoting economic development. So in this case, the main goal is to accelerate development through enlarging the market, pooling the scarce resources essential for economic growth, avoiding unnecessary and uneconomic duplication in capital investments, and achieving research and technology. Of course, there are some political goals behind regional organizations. This can be, for instance, like prevention of nationalism or preservation of nationalism. Creation of European Union can be an example of prevention of nationalism when we consider the German nationalism or French nationalism, which caused two world wars. Or another political goal can be developing a common foreign and security defense policy. For instance, considering NATO, this is a kind of political goal which focus on common defense policy of North Atlantic countries, including Turkey. And also another purpose of a regional organization can be challenge or resist the dominance of great powers and their interventions in their regions. For instance, we can consider this. Like African Union as an example of this resisting the dominance of great powers in the African continent, for instance. And also, regional organizations are established to achieve political goals such as preserving cultural identity and autonomy, or enhancing statehood, or boosting state sovereignty and political regimes. And also they provide some sort of mechanisms such as conflict management at the regional level. Finally, there are some social and cultural goals which leads to the creation of regional organizations. These are like addressing issues related to education, poverty, health, women, unemployment, and social exclusion. Let's move on to the roles of regional organizations. There are different roles that a regional organization can play. For instance, like regional organization can serve the interests of a hegemonic power, which means that regional organizations can be a tool of hegemonic regionalism. Considering China, Russia, or United States, these countries, powerful countries and regional hegemons, in other words, create some regional organization in order to dominate their respective regions. For instance, like Shanghai Cooperation Organization can be considered as an hegemonic tool of China, or American state organizations, for instance, can be considered as an hegemonic tool of United States in order to dominate Latin American politics. Another function of regional organizations is serving as a talking club, which means that they are providing a communication tool between regional political leaders. So they facilitate summits between leaders to communicate about some common regional problems. And also, regional organizations can have some patronage political functions as well. They can extract rent or promote private interests. Finally, regional organizations are also important in participating global governance through addressing or through participating in regional organizations, such as, for instance, like regional organizations can promote economic integration. So it can be an example of regional economic governance. Or regional organization provides some, for instance, dispute settlement mechanisms, such as, for instance, for trade disputes among regional members or states. And also in terms of such as NATO and Warsaw Pact illustrate, regional organizations are also providing governance tools for regional security. They can promote regional democracy and human rights governance. They can also have functions in environmental issues and disaster relief. And finally, regional organizations can play important roles in regional social, medical, educational, migratory, criminal, and gender governance of a particular region. So thank you very much for participating in this video. This is a very brief introduction to the second chapter of the Regional Organizations textbook. So I strongly suggest you to go and read your textbook. Thank you very much.